On a chilly evening in Berlin, Germany, on November 12, 2024, Aisha Diallo walked briskly through the Kreuzberg district, her scarf pulled tight against the autumn wind. At 27, Aisha was a data analyst for a tech startup, a job she'd clawed her way into after years of late-night studying and relentless applications. Born in Bamako, Mali, she'd moved to Germany at 10 with her mother, Fatoumata, and older brother, Musa, seeking safety after her father's death in a political uprising. Berlin had been their promised land, a city of opportunity, diversity, and freedom. But for Aisha, it was also a city of contradictions where smiles could hide suspicion and welcome often came with a catch. Aisha's apartment was a modest one-bedroom on Cottbusser Dam, a street alive with kebab shops, graffiti-covered walls, and the hum of languages from every corner of the globe. She loved Kreuzberg's chaos, its mix of Turkish families, punk artists, and African immigrants like herself. But tonight, her mind wasn't on the neighborhood's charm. She was late. Her boss, Lucas, had kept her past 6 p.m. To fix a data set he'd accidentally messed up. "You're so good at this, Aisha," he'd said with a grin, as if the compliment justified the extra hours. She'd nodded, swallowed her frustration, and stayed. Saying no wasn't easy when you were the only black woman in the office, always under scrutiny, always proving you belonged. As she turned onto Adalbertstrasse, her phone buzzed. It was Musa, texting from Hamburg, where he worked as a mechanic. "You good, sis? Mom's asking." Aisha smiled, typing back, "All good. Tell her I'll call tomorrow." Musa was her rock, the one who taught her to navigate Berlin's unspoken rules. Don't make waves, keep your head down, ignore the stares. But Aisha wasn't like Musa. She couldn't ignore the way her coworkers whispered when she spoke up in meetings, or how shopkeepers followed her in stores, or how strangers on the U-Bahn clutched their bags when she sat nearby. She felt it all, a constant pressure like a stone in her chest. The street was quieter now, the neon signs of bars flickering in the dusk. Aisha quickened her pace, her sneakers tapping against the pavement. She didn't notice the group of young men loitering near a shuttered vape shop until one of them called out, "Hey, Schokolade!" The word, German for chocolate, hit her like a slap. She froze, her breath catching. The voice belonged to a lanky guy in a black bomber jacket, maybe 20, with a buzz cut and a smirk. His friends, 3 others in similar streetwear, laughed, their eyes locked on her. Aisha's first instinct was to keep walking. She'd heard worse. Slurs hurled from passing cars, muttered comments in grocery lines, but something in the guy's tone, the way his friends fanned out, made her stomach twist. She turned slightly, meeting his gaze. "What did you say?" Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded. The guy's smirk widened. "Oh, she talks," I said. "Chocolate? You chocolate? You like that, yeah?" His friends snickered, one lighting a cigarette, the ember glowing in the dim light. Aisha's fists clenched in her pockets. She knew she should walk away. Musa's voice echoed in her head. "Don't give them a reason." But she was tired. Tired of swallowing her anger. Tired of pretending it didn't hurt. "Find something better to do," she said, her voice sharp. "Grow up." The guy's face hardened. He stepped closer, his height looming over her 5'4" frame. "What's that, bitch? You think you're better than us?" His friends closed in, forming a loose semicircle. The cigarette guy flicked his butt to the ground, grinding it under his boot. Aisha's eyes darted around. Adalbertstrasse was empty, the nearest bar half a block away. Her phone was in her bag, but reaching for it felt like a gamble. "I don't want trouble," she said, stepping back. Her voice wavered, betraying the fear creeping in. The stone in her chest was heavier now, pressing against her ribs. "Trouble?" Buzzcut laughed, a cold barking sound. "You're the trouble. Coming here, taking our jobs, acting like you own the place." He spat on the pavement, inches from her shoes. "Go back to Africa." The words weren't new. Aisha had heard them since she was a kid, scrawled on school lockers, shouted at protests. But tonight, they cut deeper. Maybe because she'd believed Berlin was different, that she'd earned her place here. Her eyes stung, but she blinked hard. She wouldn't cry. Not in front of them. "I was born here," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "This is my home." "Home?" The second guy, stocky with a shaved head, stepped forward. "This ain't your home." "Look at you." He gestured at her braids, her dark skin, as if they were evidence. "You don't belong." Aisha's anger flared, drowning her fear for a moment. "I belong more than you," she snapped. "You're just a bunch of losers picking fights to feel big." She knew it was a mistake the second she said it, but the words felt good, like a release. Buzzcut's eyes narrowed. "You mouthy little—" He lunged, grabbing her arm. His grip was tight, fingers digging into her jacket. Aisha yanked back, but he was stronger, pulling her toward him. "Say it again," he hissed, his breath sour with beer. "Let go!" Aisha twisted, her bag slipping off her shoulder. Panic surged. She was alone, outnumbered, and no one was coming. She stomped hard on his foot and he cursed, loosening his grip just enough for her to break free. She stumbled back, her breath ragged. "You're dead!" Buzzcut snarled, advancing again. His friends hesitated, glancing at each other, but followed his lead. The cigarette guy pulled out a pocket knife, flicking it open with a soft click. The blade caught the streetlight, glinting like a warning. Aisha's mind raced. "Run!" she thought, but her legs felt heavy, rooted by fear. She backed up, her hands raised. "I'm leaving, okay? Just stop!" Her voice cracked, and she hated it, hated how small they made her feel. Then a shout broke the tension. "Hey! What's going on?" A man's voice, sharp and authoritative, came from behind her. Aisha turned to see a middle-aged Turkish shopkeeper, Sem, standing outside his bodega with a phone in his hand. "I'm calling the police!" he yelled, waving the phone like a weapon. Buzzcut froze, his eyes flicking to Tim, then back to Aisha. "This ain't over!" he spat, shoving her hard as he backed off. She stumbled but caught herself, her heart hammering. The group retreated, cursing under their breath, disappearing into an alley as Sem approached. "You okay?" Sem asked, his face creased with worry. He was a regular stop for Aisha, always gave her an extra baklava with her coffee. "I saw them from the window. Punks!" Aisha nodded, though she wasn't okay. Her arm throbbed where Buzzcut had grabbed her, and her bag was scuffed, lying on the pavement. "Thanks," she managed, picking it up. Her hands shook as she slung it over her shoulder. "Want me to call someone?" Sem asked, still holding his phone. "No, I'm fine," Aisha lied. She didn't want police, not now. She'd seen how they treated people like her. Skeptical, dismissive, sometimes worse. "I just need to get home." Sem frowned but nodded. "Be careful, Aisha. Those guys, they're trouble. Seen them around before." He walked her to the corner, keeping an eye on the alley until she was out of sight. The walk to her apartment felt endless. Every shadow made her flinch, every sound a threat. When she finally locked her door behind her, she slid to the floor, her back against the wood. The stone in her chest was unbearable now, a weight that made it hard to breathe. She wanted to call Musa, her mom, anyone, but her phone stayed in her bag. She didn't want to worry them, didn't want to admit how scared she'd been. That night, Aisha didn't sleep. She sat on her couch, the TV on mute, replaying the encounter. "Chocolate. Go back to Africa." The words looped in her mind, each one a cut. She thought of her mother's stories of Mali, of markets and music and warmth, but also of the violence that drove them out. She thought of Berlin, the city she'd fought to call home, and how it kept reminding her she was an outsider. By morning, Aisha's fear had hardened into something else: resolve. She wasn't going to let those guys win. She'd go to work, keep building her life, prove she belonged. But as she looked in the mirror, her bruised arm staring back, she knew it wouldn't be easy. This wasn't just about one night, one group of thugs. It was about a city, a country, a world that too often saw her as less. On November 13th, Aisha walked into her office, her chin high despite the ache in her arm. Lucas greeted her with his usual grin. "Morning, superstar! Got that data set ready?" She nodded, forcing a smile, but inside she was screaming. How could he not see it? The weight she carried, the fight she faced just to exist here. That day, Aisha made a decision. She'd report the attack, not to the police, but to a local advocacy group she'd found online, one that supported immigrants and fought hate crimes. She didn't know if it would help, but it was a start. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for her mom, for Musa, for every person who'd ever been told they didn't belong. As she typed out her story for the group, her fingers trembled, but her words were steady. "My name is Aisha Diallo," she began. "Last night I was attacked for being black. I'm not staying silent." Aisha Diallo sat at her kitchen table on the morning of November 14th, 2024. Her laptop opened to the website of Zusammenstark, a Berlin-based advocacy group for immigrants and minorities. The screen glowed with stories of others who'd faced hate, slurs on the U-Bahn, vandalism, assaults. Each one felt like a mirror, reflecting her own life back at her. Her email to the group, sent late the previous night, was still open in another tab. "My name is Aisha Diallo. Last night I was attacked for being black. I'm not staying silent." The words looked braver than she felt. Her arm, still bruised from where the guy in the bomber jacket had grabbed her, throbbed as she typed a follow-up. asking to meet someone from the group. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. By noon, Aisha had a response. A woman named Lena Mueller, a caseworker with Zusammenstock, invited her to their office in New Cologne that evening. "We're here to listen and help you decide what's next," Lena wrote. "You're not alone." The words felt like a lifeline, but Aisha's stomach churned with doubt. What if they couldn't help? What if speaking out made things worse? She thought of her mother, Fatoumata, who'd always warned her to blend in, to avoid trouble. But blending in hadn't stopped the attack on Adalbertstrasse. It hadn't stopped the whispers at work or the stares on the street. She was done hiding. The Zusammenstock office was a cramped second-floor space above a falafel shop, its walls plastered with posters about equality and anti-racism marches. Lena, a white woman in her late 30s with short blonde hair and a warm smile, greeted Aisha at the door. "You must be Aisha," she said, offering a handshake. "Come in, grab some tea." The room smelled of mint and ink with stacks of flyers and a humming printer in the corner. Another advocate, a Somali man named Hassan, joined them, his presence calming Aisha's nerves. He'd been through this himself, he said, an assault in 2021 that left him with a scarred lip and a distrust of police. Aisha told her story, her voice steady at first but cracking as she described the knife, the slurs, the shopkeeper's intervention. Lena took notes, her pen scratching softly. Hassan nodded, his eyes knowing. When Aisha finished, Lena leaned forward. "What you went through is a hate crime, Aisha. You have options: reporting to the police, filing a civil complaint, or going public to raise awareness. But I won't lie, none of these are easy. The system can be unkind." Aisha's mind flashed to the police station near her apartment, the way officers had once stopped her brother, Musa, for looking suspicious while he waited for a bus. "I don't trust the police," she admitted. "But I want those guys to face something. They can't just walk away," Hassan spoke up. "We can help you file a report anonymously through our network. It's not perfect, but it's a start. We can also connect you with a lawyer if you want to pursue charges." He paused, studying her. "You said you're not staying silent. That's powerful. If you're ready, we can amplify your story, social media, community events. It could push the police to act." Aisha hesitated. Going public meant exposure, judgment, maybe retaliation, but staying quiet meant letting those guys win. "Let's do both," she said finally. "The report and telling people. I want them to know what happened." Lena smiled, though her eyes were serious. "Okay, we'll start with a statement you approve, shared through our channels. You decide how much detail, whether you want your name out there. We'll be with you every step." That night, Aisha lay awake, her mind racing. She'd agreed to a public statement using her first name only. Aisha, 27, was attacked in Kreuzberg on November 12, 2024, by a group of men who used racial slurs and threatened her with a knife. Zusammenstock would post it on Instagram and Twitter, along with a call for witnesses. It felt like a small step, but also a leap. She wondered what her co-workers would think, what her mom would say. Fatoumata had called earlier, sensing something was wrong, but Aisha had dodged her questions. She wasn't ready to tell her yet. By November 16th, the post was live. Aisha checked her phone obsessively, watching likes and retweets climb. Comments poured in, some supportive, "Stay strong, Aisha," others vicious, "She's lying for attention." A few mentioned Kreuzberg's problem with foreigners, twisting her story into fuel for their own hate. Each one stung, but Aisha kept reading, unable to look away. Musa texted her. "Saw the post. You sure about this? Call me." She didn't reply. She wasn't sure of anything anymore. At work, the fallout came fast. On November 17th, Aisha noticed her co-worker Sophie avoiding eye contact in the break room. Sophie, who'd always been friendly, now busied herself with her coffee mug when Aisha walked in. Lucas, her boss, called her into his office that afternoon. "Aisha, this thing you posted," he said, gesturing vaguely at his computer. "It's causing a stir. Some clients saw it and, well, they're asking questions." His tone was light, but his eyes were cold. "Maybe keep personal stuff off the internet, yeah?" Aisha's jaw tightened. It wasn't personal. It was a hate crime. She hated how defensive she sounded, like she was the one who'd done something wrong. Lucas sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I get it, it's tough, but we're a small company. Drama doesn't help." He paused, then added, "You're still on the big project, but let's keep things smooth, okay?" Aisha nodded, her throat tight. She left his office feeling smaller. the stone in her chest heavier than ever. Back at her desk, she overheard two colleagues whispering about that Kreutzberg story. One said, "She shouldn't have provoked them." Aisha's hands shook as she typed, her focus shattered. She wanted to scream, to tell them what it felt like to face a knife for existing, but she stayed silent. She needed this job. That evening, Aisha met Hassan at a cafe near Zusamenstark's office. He'd called to check in, sensing her unease. Over tea, she told him about work, the comments, her fear of losing everything. Hassan listened, his scarred lip a reminder of his own battles. "This is the hard part," he said. "You're not just fighting those guys. You're fighting a system that wants you to stay quiet. But you're not alone. We've got your back." Hassan shared that the police had opened an investigation, thanks to pressure from Zusamenstark's network. A witness, possibly Sem, the shopkeeper, had come forward describing the group's leader, a tall guy with a buzz cut. Aisha's anonymous report had helped, though the police were cagey about details. "They're looking for the suspects," Hassan said. "But don't expect miracles. Hate crime cases, they often stall." Aisha nodded, unsurprised. She'd seen news stories about attacks like hers. Rarely did anyone face real consequences. Still, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe this time would be different. On November 20th, Aisha's hope took a hit. She arrived at her apartment to find a note taped to her door. "Go home, Chocolate." The word was scrawled in red marker. The paper crumpled as if someone had shoved it there in a hurry. Aisha's heart raced as she scanned the hallway, empty and silent. She tore the note down, her hands trembling, and locked herself inside. The stone in her chest was crushing now, stealing her breath. She called Hassan, who urged her to report it to Zusamenstark and keep the note as evidence. "This is retaliation," he said. "They know you spoke out." Aisha didn't sleep that night. She sat by her window watching the street below, half expecting to see Buzzcut and his friends. She thought of her mom's warnings, Musa's texts, Lucas's dismissal. Had she made a mistake? Was speaking out worth this fear, this isolation? But then, she thought of the supportive comments, the strangers who'd shared her story, the spark in Hassan's eyes when he talked about justice. She wasn't alone, not entirely. The next morning, November 21st, Aisha called her mother. Fatumata's voice was warm but worried, picking up on Aisha's strain. "What's wrong, my girl?" she asked. Aisha broke down, telling her everything. The attack, the post, the note. Fatumata was silent for a long moment, then said, "You're brave, Aisha. Braver than I ever was. But be careful. This world, it doesn't love us." "I know, Mama," Aisha whispered, "but I can't stop now." Fatumata sighed. "Then fight. But don't fight alone. Come home this weekend. Let me hold you." Aisha promised she would. As she hung up, she felt a flicker of strength. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her mom, for Musa, for every person who'd felt that stone in their chest. She opened her laptop and started typing a new statement for Zusamenstark, this time using her full name. "My name is Aisha Diallo, and I'm still here. I was attacked, threatened, and told to go home. But this is my home, and I'm not going anywhere." On November 22nd, 2024, Aisha Diallo woke to the sound of her phone buzzing relentlessly on her nightstand. Her apartment was cold, the radiator clanking in protest against the Berlin winter creeping in. She hadn't slept well, not since finding the note on her door, "Go home, Chocolat," 2 days earlier. The red scrawl was burned into her mind, a reminder that her fight wasn't just against the men who'd attacked her on Adalbertstrasse, but against something bigger, something that knew where she lived. She grabbed her phone, expecting another message from Musa or her mother, but it was an email from Lena Mueller at Zusamenstark. The subject line made her heart skip. "Update on your case." Lena wrote that the police had identified a suspect in the November 12th attack, thanks to Chem's witness statement and CCTV footage from a nearby bar. The suspect, Jonas Becker, 21, matched Aisha's description of the buzz-cut guy in the bomber jacket. He'd been arrested that morning at a gym in Kreutzberg, along with another man, Felix Gross, 23, who'd been with him that night. The third and fourth men remained at large, but this was a breakthrough. "Jonas has a record," Lena noted. "Minor assault, vandalism, linked to far-right groups. The police want to interview you. Let us know how you want to proceed." Aisha sat up, her pulse racing. Jonas Becker. The name gave shape to her fear, making it real but also surmountable. She pictured his smirk, his fingers digging into her arm, the knife glinting in his friend's hand. Part of her wanted to face him, to look him in the eye and demand answers. But another part, the part that flinched at every shadow, wanted to run, to delete her statement, to disappear. She closed her eyes, the stone in her chest heavier than ever. Then she texted Lena, "I'll talk to them, but I want you or Hassan there." The interview was set for November 24th at a police station in Neukölln. Aisha spent the intervening day trying to focus on work, but her office felt like a minefield. Since Lucas's warning about her drama, her co-workers' whispers had grown bolder. On November 22nd, she caught Sophie and another analyst, Marcus, talking in the break room. "It's always something with her," Marcus said, not bothering to lower his voice. "First the post, now she's dragging the company into it." Sophie nodded, her eyes flicking to Aisha before looking away. Aisha's face burned, but she didn't confront them. She couldn't afford to, not when Lucas was already watching her every move. That afternoon, Lucas called her into his office again. He was all smiles, but his words were sharp. "Aisha, you're a great analyst, but you're slipping. That report you sent yesterday? Errors everywhere. I need you focused." He leaned forward, his voice softening like he was doing her a favor. "I know you've got personal stuff going on. Maybe take some time off, clear your head." Aisha's stomach dropped. The report had been fine. She'd double-checked it. This wasn't about her work. It was about her story, her visibility, her refusal to stay quiet. "I don't need time off," she said, her voice tight. "I'm focused." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "All right, but don't let me down. We're counting on you." The words sounded like a threat. As Aisha left his office, she noticed a new email on her phone from HR. Performance review scheduled November 28th. Her heart sank. She'd never had a review in her 2 years at the company, not until now. The timing wasn't a coincidence. That night, Aisha visited her mother in Charlottenburg, a promise she'd made after their emotional call. Fatoumata's apartment was small but warm, filled with the scent of jollof rice and the sound of Malian music playing softly. Aisha sank into the couch, letting her mom's presence soothe her frayed nerves. But Fatoumata wasn't fooled. "You're carrying too much, my girl," she said, setting a plate of food in front of Aisha. "This fight, it's eating you." Aisha told her about Jonas's arrest, the police interview, the trouble at work. Fatoumata listened, her eyes dark with worry. "You're doing what I never could," she said finally. "Back in Bamako, we ran from hate. Here, you're facing it. But Aisha, it's a heavy price. Are you sure?" Aisha's throat tightened. "I'm not sure, Mama, but if I stop, they win. I can't let them." Fatoumata took her hand, her grip firm. "Then don't stop, but don't carry it alone. You have me, Musa, your friends. Let us help." Aisha nodded, tears stinging her eyes. She stayed until midnight, the warmth of her mother's home a shield against the cold world outside. But as she rode the U-Bahn back to Kreuzberg, the weight returned. She checked Zusammen Stark's latest post about her case, now shared over 5,000 times. The comments were a battlefield, support from strangers mixed with vile attacks. "She's making it up," one read. "Africa's calling, Aisha." Her fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to reply, but she locked her phone instead. She couldn't fight every troll. On November 24th, Aisha arrived at the Neukölln police station with Hassan by her side. The building was gray and imposing, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. A detective, Officer Katrin Weiss, led them to a small interview room. She was polite but brisk, her questions clinical. "Can you describe the suspects? What exactly did they say? Did you provoke them in any way?" Aisha bristled at the last question, but Hassan's steady presence kept her grounded. She recounted every detail, the slurs, the knife, Kim's shout, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. Weiss nodded, jotting notes. "We've got Becker and Gross in custody. Your statement matches the footage and the witness. We're charging them with assault and hate crimes, but the others are still out there. Can you identify them if we find them?" Aisha swallowed. "Maybe. I'd try." Weiss's expression softened slightly. "You're doing the right thing, but be prepared. Cases like this, they drag, and the media's picking it up. You might get attention you don't want." Aisha left the station feeling drained but resolute. Hassan walked her to the U-Bahn, his words a quiet anchor. "You were strong in there. This is progress, Aisha. Hold on to that." But progress felt fragile. On November 25th, Aisha woke to a local news article about her case, shared by Zusammen Stark. It named Jonas Becker as a member of a known far-right group, Freiheit Jetzt, active in Berlin's outer districts. The article quoted Aisha's statement and included a blurry still from the CCTV showing Jonas's face. comments on the article were brutal. Some praised her courage, but others called her a troublemaker or worse. One commenter wrote, "She'll regret this." Aisha's hands shook as she read it, the note on her door flashing in her mind. At work, the tension was unbearable. On November 26th, Aisha found her desk chair slashed, the fabric torn in jagged lines. She reported it to HR, but the woman she spoke to, Clara, seemed skeptical. "Could have been an accident," Clara said, barely looking up from her computer. "We'll look into it." Aisha knew they wouldn't. She spent the day hyper-aware of every glance, every whisper. Marcus openly smirked when she passed him in the hall, and Sophie stopped talking whenever Aisha entered a room. Lucas, meanwhile, piled on more work, his deadlines impossible. "Step it up, Aisha," he said, his smile thin. "We're all under pressure." That evening, Aisha's resolve cracked. She sat in her apartment, the lights off, staring at the note she'd kept as evidence. "Go home, Chocolata." She wanted to call Musa, but he was working a double shift in Hamburg. She wanted to call Lena or Hassan, but it was late, and she hated feeling like a burden. The stone in her chest was suffocating, and for the first time she wondered if her mom was right, if the price was too high. Then her phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "You're next, bitch!" Aisha's breath caught. She blocked the number, but another message came from a different one. "We know where you live." Her hands trembled as she screenshot the text and sent them to Hassan. He called immediately. "Aisha, pack a bag. Stay with a friend tonight. I'm calling the police." Aisha didn't argue. She grabbed her essentials and took a taxi to her friend Zara's place in Friedrichshain. Zara, a Moroccan graphic designer who'd known Aisha since university, didn't ask questions. She just opened her door and hugged her. "You're safe here," Zara said, her voice fierce. "Fuck those cowards." But Aisha didn't feel safe. As she lay on Zara's couch, the texts replayed in her mind. She thought of Jonas Becker, his smirk, his friend still out there. She thought of her slashed chair, Lucas's warnings, the comments online. Her fight was growing bigger than she'd imagined, and she wasn't sure she was strong enough to carry it. On November 27th, Hassan met Aisha at a cafe to discuss the threats. He'd reported the texts and the note to the police, who promised to monitor her building. Zusammenstock was organizing a rally in Kreuzberg on December 1st to support Aisha and others facing hate crimes. "You don't have to speak," Hassan said. "Just being there would mean something." Aisha nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She was due for her HR review the next day, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Lucas was building a case to fire her. She thought of her mom's words, "Don't fight alone." She needed allies, not just Zara or Zusammenstock, but someone at work, someone with power. She thought of Elena, a senior analyst who'd always been kind, who'd once shared stories of her own struggles as a Ukrainian immigrant. Maybe Elena could help. As Aisha left the cafe, she felt a flicker of determination. She wasn't done fighting, not for herself, not for her family, not for the others reading her story online. But the text, the note, the slashed chair, they were warnings. The battle was far from over and the cost was rising. On November 28, 2024, Aisha Diallo walked into her company's HR office in Berlin's Mitte district, her stomach knotted with dread. The performance review, scheduled after her public statement about the November 12th attack, loomed like a trap. She'd spent the previous night at Zara's apartment, unable to return to her own after the threatening texts. "You're next, bitch," and "We know where you live," and the slashed chair at her desk. The stone in her chest, that heavy weight of fear and anger, felt like it might crush her, but she straightened her shoulders and stepped inside. She wasn't just fighting for her job today. She was fighting for her right to exist, to be seen, to be heard. Clara, the HR manager, sat behind a desk cluttered with files, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. Next to her was Lucas, Aisha's boss, his usual grin replaced by a tight-lipped frown. Aisha's heart sank. This wasn't a review. It was an ambush. Clara gestured to a chair. "Aisha, let's get started. We've had some concerns about your performance." Aisha sat, her hands clasped to hide their trembling. "What concerns?" she asked, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her throat. Clara slid a folder across the desk, opened to a list of issues, missed deadlines, errors in reports, complaints from coworkers. Aisha's eyes scanned the page, her anger flaring. The deadlines were ones Lucas had made impossible, piling on work after her statement went viral. The errors were fabricated. She'd checked every report meticulously, knowing she was under scrutiny. The complaints, vague and unattributed, smelled of Marcus and Sophie's whispers. "This isn't true," Aisha said, her voice rising. "I've done my job, better than most." Lucas leaned forward, his tone patronizing. "Aisha, we know you've been distracted. This personal stuff, it's affecting the team. Clients are noticing." He glanced at Clara as if for backup. "We're a small company. We can't afford disruptions." Aisha's face burned. "Disruptions? You mean me being attacked? Me speaking out about a hate crime?" She turned to Clara. "My desk chair was slashed. I've been harassed. That's the disruption, not me." Clara's expression didn't change. "We're investigating the chair incident, but we have no proof it's related to you. As for your performance, these issues predate your situation." She tapped the folder. "We're putting you on a performance improvement plan. 30 days to show progress, or we'll have to reconsider your role." Aisha's breath caught. A performance improvement plan was a death sentence. Companies used them to justify firings. She wanted to scream, to throw the folder in their faces, but she thought of her mom's words, "Don't fight alone." She needed this job, not just for the money, but for the life she'd built. "I want to appeal this," she said, her voice low but firm. "And I'm bringing in a colleague, Elena Petrovna. She's seen my work." Clara's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. "You can appeal. Submit it in writing by next week." Lucas shifted in his seat, his discomfort clear. Elena, a senior analyst, had clout in the company, and Aisha's gamble to involve her might shift the balance. Aisha left the office shaking, her resolve fraying but intact. She texted Elena immediately, explaining the review and asking for support. Elena replied within minutes. "I've got you, Aisha. Your work is solid. We'll fight this." The words were a lifeline, pulling Aisha back from the edge, but the fight was far from over. On November 29th, Aisha met Hassan at Zusammenstärke's office to prepare for the December 1st rally in Kreuzberg. The event, dubbed Stand Against Hate, aimed to support Aisha and others targeted by racism, with speeches, music, and a march through the neighborhood. Lena showed Aisha a draft of the flyer, featuring her story alongside others. A Syrian refugee harassed at a bus stop, a Turkish teenager beaten outside a club. "You're inspiring people, Aisha," Lena said. Over 1,000 have RSVP'd. Aisha managed to smile, but the threatening texts and the note on her door weighed on her. The police had increased patrols near her apartment, but no one had been caught. Jonas Becker and Felix Gross were still in custody, but their friends, the other two from the attack, were out there, and Aisha felt their presence like a shadow. "What if they show up at the rally?" she asked Hassan. He met her gaze, his scarred lip a reminder of his own battles. "We've got security volunteers and police on alert. You'll be safe. But if you're not ready to speak, you don't have to." Aisha shook her head. "I'm speaking. They need to hear me." She'd written a short speech, just a few minutes, about her attack and why she was fighting. It wasn't polished, but it was hers, every word carved from the stone in her chest. On December 1st, Kreuzberg's Gorlitzer Park buzzed with energy. The rally drew a diverse crowd, black, Turkish, Arab, white, young, old, all bundled against the cold. Banners waved, "No hate in Berlin, justice for Aisha." A stage was set up near the park's entrance, with a microphone and speakers blasting protest songs. Aisha stood backstage with Lena and Hassan, her hands clammy despite the chill. Zara was in the crowd, holding a sign that read, "Aisha, we see you." Musa had driven down from Hamburg, his presence a quiet strength at her side. As Lena opened the rally, Aisha scanned the crowd. Most faces were supportive, but a small group at the edge caught her eye. White men in dark jackets, their expressions hard. One held a sign, "Berlin for Germans." Her stomach twisted. They weren't many, maybe 10, but their presence felt like a challenge. She gripped Musa's arm. "You see them?" He nodded, his jaw tight. "Stay close to me." Aisha's speech was third after a poet and a refugee advocate. When Lena called her name, the crowd cheered, their warmth pushing back her fear. She stepped to the microphone, her notes trembling in her hand. "My name is Aisha Diallo," she began, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "On November 12th, I was attacked in Kreuzberg for being black. They called me slurs, threatened me with a knife, told me to go home. But this is my home. I was born here. I work here. I belong here." The crowd roared, drowning out the hecklers at the edge. Aisha kept going, her words gaining strength. "I'm not just fighting for me. I'm fighting for everyone who's been told they don't belong, who's been hurt for who they are. We're not invisible. We're not going anywhere." She paused, her eyes locking on the men with the sign. "And we're not afraid." The applause was deafening, but as Aisha stepped off the stage, she saw movement in the crowd. The hecklers were pushing forward, shouting now. "Go back to Africa," one yelled, his voice cutting through the noise. Security volunteers moved to block them, but the tension was electric. Aisha's heart raced as Musa pulled her behind him. "Stay back," he said, his voice low. Then she saw him, Buzzcut's friend, the one with the knife from that night. He was in the heckler group, his shaved head gleaming under the park's lights. Their eyes met, and his lips curled into a sneer. "Aisha," he mouthed, her name a threat. Before she could react, he threw something, a bottle shattering on the ground near the stage. Chaos erupted. The crowd screamed, some scattering, others surging toward the hecklers. Police waded in, batons raised as security tried to hold the line. Hassan grabbed Aisha's arm. "We need to go now." He and Musa guided her through the crowd, away from the stage, as sirens wailed in the distance. Zara caught up, her face pale. "They planned this," she said, breathless. "They came to start shit." Aisha's legs felt weak, but she kept moving. The knife guy's sneer burned into her mind. They reached a side street where Lena was waiting with a car. "Get in," she said, her voice urgent. "Police are handling it, but you're a target." Inside the car, Aisha's breath came in gasps. "That was him," she said, her voice shaking. "The guy with the knife, he was there." Lena's eyes widened. "You're sure?" Aisha nodded and Lena texted someone, likely the police. "We'll report it. They've got names now. Jonas's crew. They're not untouchable." Musa squeezed Aisha's hand. "You were incredible up there. Don't let them take that from you." But as the car sped toward Zara's apartment, Aisha felt the stone in her chest shift. Not lighter, but different. She'd faced her fear, spoken her truth, and the crowd had heard her. But the knife guy's sneer, the bottle, the hecklers, they were proof her fight was far from won. She thought of her mom, of Elena, of the 1,000 faces in the crowd who'd cheered. She wasn't alone, but she was exposed, a target in a way she hadn't been before. On December 2nd, Aisha woke to news that the rally had made national headlines. 3 hecklers, including the knife guy, identified as Lucas Schmidt, 22, had been arrested for inciting violence. Social media was alight with #StandAgainstHate, her speech clipped and shared thousands of times. But the far-right group, Freiheit Jetzt, had posted too, calling her a liar and vowing to defend Berlin. The threats kept coming, new texts, new comments, new fears. Aisha met Elena that day, who promised to testify to her work quality in the appeal. "You're not going down without a fight," Elena said, her accent thick with determination. Zusammen Stark was planning a press conference, and the police were closing in on the 4th suspect. Aisha's story was no longer just hers. It was a spark igniting debates, protests, and hate in equal measure. As she sat in Zara's apartment drafting her appeal, Aisha felt the weight of it all. She was tired, scared, but not broken. She typed her name at the top of the page, Aisha Diallo, and kept going. This was her home, her fight, her life, and she wasn't done.